Those who have joined us for the past sessions have known this already, but for the first timers, you may be wondering why Agony Expert Series. We have drawn inspiration from an agony aunt, who by definition is a person who writes a column in a newspaper or magazine in which they reply to readers who have written to them for advice on their personal problems. In short, it's kind of a play on that concept. Thus, the agony experts that we have now, where you, our participants, can share what problems and struggles you are facing within your organization and seek insight directly from our expert. So, this is just the 13th of the many, by the way, and we have four more to go. As you can see on the screen, together with a total of 17 world-class experts that we have gathered, they'll be covering 8 different topics that are timely and relevant in our industry today. Well, the good news is you can cherry pick what session you'd like to attend. Okay, we have another one in the chat box. June here from Indonesia. Hello, June. Welcome to the session. And for today's session, it will be about strategy efficacy. And it's an honor to introduce the three tough guys from the Leadership Gallery, the Strategy and IP Director, Anish Gupta, the Business Development Facilitator, Philip Festa, and last but not the least, the CEO and founder of the Leadership Gallery, Rob Shorrick. They will discuss the concept of strategy execution model and how it can help aligning your organization for success. And just a little bit of background of who we are. People is a consulting firm that started in 2004, sold itself and relaunched in 2020 with a consulting model geared towards the future of work. Our team serves both our clients and our network of over 1,000 experts. Who are these experts? We have consultants, business leaders, thought leaders, researchers, and tech partners. Together, we deliver consulting work, speaking engagement, launch and learns, training, coaching, instructional design, organizational, and people diagnostics. Our experts deliver work across 6 broad domains: people, digital innovation, business, sustainability, change management, and design. In short, people can attend to any business challenge you might have. So please do check our website and find out more about us at www.people.com. And just a quick run through of what's going to happen today. We have Rob, Philip, and Anish to address the group for approximately 25 minutes, followed by Q&A with you for another 25 minutes. Then we will go and wrap things up for you in the last remaining 5 minutes of the event for us to get feedback of what you think of today's session. Again, would love to receive your questions and drop them in the chat box, and we will address them during the Q&A session. I know you're all very excited, and I won't keep you any longer. So, handing it over to you, Rob, Philip, and Anish. The floor is all yours.
Thank you, Rizal. And hello, everybody. Pleased to be with you on this session, and we're looking forward to talking to you about how to help your organization align your organization for success, or what we call effective strategy execution. Let me just do the Rizal has kindly introduced our team, but just to show you again who we are, so that you know who you're talking to. So first of all, you have Anish Gupta, who will be with us. He's our Director of Strategy and IP. We have Philip Festa, who's our Director of Business Development, and myself. We are the founders of the Leadership Gallery, and the Leadership Gallery began around about 2015. And our intent was to help organizations effectively deliver or effectively execute their business strategy. So we start off with a rationale, and the rationale is very straightforward. And that is based on research, not just our research, but the research of many other organizations and many other known and respected institutions. But if you are going to have effective strategy execution, or let's just rephrase that a bit, if you're going to be able to deliver your strategy really, really well, it's absolutely important that your leaders and managers are aligned to that strategy, and also that the organization is aligned to that strategy. Without that alignment, both by people and by organizations, systems, and processes, it's really unlikely that your strategy will be successfully delivered or successfully executed. So our purpose is quite simple: aligning your organization for success. Now let's strip out this word strategy just very, very quickly. So it is true that most companies have some kind of a strategy or some kind of a plan, if you like. For some organizations, as it says here on the slide, that plan is actually pretty well formal, and they have very sophisticated processes to build strategic planning. And it happens with large organizations on an annual basis, sometimes on a quarterly basis. For some organizations, it's less formal, but there's still a plan there. And most of the time, nearly all of the time, in fact, whether it's formal or informal, it's reasonably well understood what an organization is trying to achieve, where it's going. But we often, scratched our head and said, well, how come is it that so many of these plans and so many of these strategies actually fail? Why is it that so many just aren't successful? If you look at a particular piece of research that took place around 2017, and there are many, many more, Harvard Business Review actually said that 67% of well-formulated strategies fail due to poor execution. Let's just pause on that and just think what that means. If 2/3 of organizations who say they have really well-formulated strategies aren't actually delivering them properly, what that actually means is this: the owners, the shareholders, the stakeholders, the employees, the supply chains, all of the kind of connections and the stakeholders connected to a particular business, or all of those businesses, have an expectation. And that expectation has been determined by the leaders in that business who've put together the plans and put together the strategy, no matter how big or small that business is, and said, this is where we're going, this is what we want to achieve. And everyone who's a stakeholder in that business says, yeah, fine, I agree with that. I like the sound of that. So whether you're a public or a private company, there's an expectation that a plan is going to be met. But here's the deal: 2/3 of those plans aren't actually met. They're not actually delivered. And so that's 2/3 of those stakeholders, which, you can work it out for yourself. If this relates to every organization in the world, and it may or may not, but it certainly relates to a lot of organizations, there are a lot of people who are actually being let down. And they're being let down because of the organization's failure to actually deliver or execute their strategy well. So that's a pretty significant and pretty worrying statistic. So we looked at that and said, well, let's see if we can work out how to help organizations with this. Now, just to show you something you've probably seen before maybe in a different format, but in some respects, this model, which has been used by different people in different ways, but this is our version of it, just says something very simple. An organization nearly always starts off with a core purpose. It may not even actually articulate that purpose as well as it wants to, but organizations start off by saying, well, this is why we exist. This is the reason why we're here. And it's maintaining an understanding of that, which is really important. From that flows the vision and the strategic goals, and from that flows the strategy. And in order to deliver that strategy, it's really important that some of these pieces are in place: the key skills, the right kind of processes and systems, the right kind of structures, and the way in which an organization is configured. And of course, really important, the fact that employees within the business are actually motivated and aligned to actually achieve what the organization wants to achieve. Now, when things are going really well, all of this is lined up and all of this makes sense. And you'd be able to pick out, well, this is where we're going as an organization. Therefore, these are the skills and capabilities we need. And yes, we have them. And it all makes sense. But where some of these things go out of alignment, that's where things start to go wrong. So we also say that actually, it's actually pretty tough. It can be tough unless you understand some of these pieces. And we say, well, actually, the role of leadership or managers or those who are responsible for driving the strategy, we think the role of leadership is actually to provide that vision and direction to help the organization become aligned. But that's where it's quite difficult. It's quite difficult to actually achieve that execution if you're not aware of all the different pieces, and you're not aware of all, we've shown them as gears here, but if you're not aware of all the different gears and how they work together. So as obvious as this sounds, we have come across so many organizations where you look at a plan and you say, well, why isn't it working? And it could be that they've just chosen the wrong reward system to actually help them deliver their strategy. So I'll give you an example, very simple one. We worked with an organization that changed the way in which it delivered products to its clients. In actual fact, they combined a series of products to deliver what they called solutions, which is not an uncommon way of moving forward. But they didn't change any of the reward systems for their sales force. And the sales force was still being rewarded on product delivery rather than on solution delivery and combining products together as solutions. And needless to say, the organization was failing badly because the salespeople were being driven and rewarded in a way that was an old way based on their previous business model. It stands to reason, therefore, that needed to be changed, and it was, and that really helped the organization. So as simple as that may sound, it's really important because that very small kind of change, that very small modification that was made actually really helped the organization to realign itself. They also then realized that they didn't have the right skills and capabilities, etc. So all of these things were connected in that case. So the role of a leader is really, really important to bring all these pieces together. So just as a bit of a summary of this first piece here, why do we think strategies fail? From all of our research and all of the companies we've worked for, and also the four of us, or the three of us, there are four directors in the leadership gallery, one not on this call, but the three of us on this call have all worked in very large organizations and some small organizations too. And these seem to be the common themes. They fail because organizations aren't thinking clearly enough about competitors and about changing market factors. They're not actually really anticipating what those changes could be, and as a consequence, they're not helping themselves to anticipate the future. Sometimes organization structures aren't right, and with organization structures, needless to say, and a lot of organizations are flattening out now, but there still are structures in place, and of course there are still decisions that need to be made. But where those are not clear, that does tend to mess up your ability as a company to deliver your strategy. Again, it goes without reason, it stands to reason, I should say, that skills and capabilities are absolutely vital. Culture is important, reward systems are important. And if that whole piece that relates to people, skills, capabilities, culture, engaged employees, if that's not given enough attention, the strategy will not be delivered properly. And of course, if you're changing as an organization, changing direction, maybe as a result of COVID, or maybe as a result of digitization, whatever, you're changing direction, and many organizations are, you cannot just accept that the old systems and processes that you had previously will help you and will be the systems you need going forward. they will need to be reviewed and changed as well. So if you could capture it in 4 simple reasons why strategies fail, those would be them. And there are obviously various levels of detail beneath each of those, but to look at the top level, those are the 4 reasons. So what we'd like to do now is, oh, sorry, I just realized I have one more slide, which I will show you. There's something else which is fundamental in any organization. So whether it's a leadership team or a management team, the team that is driving the strategy forward, they do need to be aligned. Now, again, one of these things is it nearly always sounds very, very obvious, but if that team is not aligned, it only takes one member of that team with a wrong message to cause confusion in the organization, because one person in a team will have a big impact on the rest of the team. Now, in an organization of 10, let's say it's a small business, it's got 10 people, one person on that management team who thinks things should be done differently or in a different way, you'll get a confused message and you'll get a lack of energy. Just imagine if it's a company with 200 people or 400 people or 10,000 people. You only need one person on that team that's supposed to be responsible for strategy sending a different message, or what we call an off message, to the organization, and the whole organization or a massive part of the organization gets confused. So is it any wonder if the leadership teams and the managers and the employees are not aligned, is it any wonder that the 2/3 of well-formulated strategies actually fail due to poor execution? So alignment from our point of view is absolutely key. It's a key element, if not the key element, of successful strategy execution. And what I'd like to just quickly show you now is a very short video which explains what we do. And then I just would like to finish off with a summary of what it is that the Leadership Gallery does, how it works, and then we'll open up for questions. So a very short video, and it only lasts 1 minute.
Your company has just reviewed and communicated your business strategy, but you're struggling to deliver it successfully. You're not alone. Just like you, around 70% of organizations struggle to deliver the outcomes of their strategies due to poor execution. Most times, this isn't because of a flawed game plan, but because people don't ask the tough questions up front that can uncover how well the organization is aligned to deliver your objectives. At the Leadership Gallery, we help you find the answers to take the risk out of strategy execution. We know that having invested considerable time, money, and effort into developing your strategy, it's an expensive mistake if it doesn't deliver. That's why we help organizations test whether they have the right tools, systems, capabilities, and processes in place to deliver their plans. Align Plus, our unique proprietary suite of diagnostic tools, enables business leaders to identify the gaps and misalignments in their organization. We start by examining your strategy in 18 key areas, highlighting internal and external factors over which you may or may not have control, but which will affect your business. This gives you the confidence to proceed with precision, knowing the areas of focus that need to be addressed. Do you find your strategy execution falls short of desired results? Find out how the Leadership Gallery can help you navigate through these challenges. We take the risk out of strategy execution.
So that was a nice little advert for us, but I think it also summarized what I've been saying as we've been going through this presentation. I have just 2 more pieces that I wanted to say before we go into the Q&A. So when the Leadership Gallery works with organizations, it starts off by looking at their strategy, looking at their existing plans, and asking a series of questions against a number of dimensions. Those 3 dimensions are as listed here. We first of all say, well, how robust is your strategy? In other words, have you thought clearly about the things, the assumptions about context, about purpose, environment, etc.? Have you really understood the assumptions that you need to understand in order to build your plan well. Because often organizations make a series of assumptions about how things are going to go, and then those assumptions don't actually happen. They don't come to fruition. I guess nobody would have expected 2 years ago that we were going to be hit by a global pandemic. Now, that's not necessarily something you can always build into a strategy, but there are all kinds of other assumptions that you do make, that certain things are going to work well, that you're going to have the right capabilities in place, that things are going to cost a certain amount, that actually regulations, that's a big one in certain parts of the world, are going to be really, really clear, and they're not going to affect your business going forward. We then say to you, well, you know, how resilient is your plan? How resilient is your strategy? You've promised your shareholders, your owners, all the stakeholders in your business, you've promised them that you're going to deliver a certain amount of growth, a certain number of, a certain set of numbers for your business, a certain set of products for your clients. But if a couple of those assumptions go wrong, if one or two of those assumptions go wrong, will you still be able to deliver your plan? So any good planning would say, we've made the assumptions, we've understood what happens if some of these go wrong, and actually we will still be able to deliver our plan. But what we find is, even with some of the most sophisticated big programs, big companies in the world that we deal with, sometimes they have not tested their assumptions and their strategies are failing. And finally, we ask, how ready are you? So are your structures, processes, decision-making mechanisms? If you remember back to my earlier model, the orange piece is saying, you know, some of the internal mechanisms, are they all set up? Are you ready now to actually deliver your strategy? And quite often the case is that organizations aren't. So very simple, really. How robust, how resilient, how ready are you to deliver your strategy? And we help organizations understand that. And then finally, we say, let's build some indices. Let's help you understand on an ongoing basis how you stack up against yourself, but also against other organizations. And this is just an example, but where an organization has an overall index that is below 80 on its strategy, we know that there are some serious flaws in the way in which they put together their plans and put together their strategy. And then we break that down underneath into an index for how robust the strategy is, resilient, and how ready it is. And we help an organization understand where those gaps and misalignments are. The final thing that we do with organizations is we help them understand, we give them some insights, and we say, well, these appear to be the areas of great concern, and these appear to be the areas of great strength. Now, this is just an example chart just to show you, and it looks colorful, but what it does is it enables us, with the team, with the managers or with the leaders within a business, to identify where they should put their focus and where they should put their attention. In the case of this particular organization, they really, it's only an example, but they really need to understand competitive responses to their strategy, because they clearly haven't factored those in, or there's an inconsistent view as to whether they factored those in or not to their strategy. And there are other areas where they are concerned as well. So by identifying areas of concern and identifying areas of strength, we are able to help organizations really focus on what they need to do and what they need to do differently. So insights, indices, and real capabilities to deliver the organization's strategy is what we can help with. And we then help with organizations down the line work out how to put those into place and how to make the necessary changes. That's me done on this presentation. What I'd now like to do is I'd now like to open up for Q&A. And please ask us anything you'd like. I have some really great experts in our team. So I have Anish Gupta, who is a global expert in organization strategy, Phil Fester, who is our business development director, who has a great deal of experience of working with clients in this area. And of course, I'm open for questions as well. We'd love to hear your questions. Please fire away.
All right. Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation, Rob. So we have learned so much about the strategy execution as well as the alignment strategy, and it is indeed an interesting and surely effective tool to identify areas within the organization that needs to be properly aligned for the organization to have the best chance of success. And I'm sure even our participants right now are very excited to experience firsthand the analysis that this tool can provide for the organization. So there you go. We're now entering the Q&A part of the session. If anyone have any questions, clarifications, comments, now is the perfect time to bring that and our experts will address them. Go pop it in the chat box or unmute yourself and ask away. Okay, we have a question. How do you get a CEO given and recognize that they aren't going to be successful? Okay. We have a question here. How do you get a CEO given and recognize that they aren't going to be successful in implementing a strategy? Further, do you work with their own team to implement the strategy, or do you use your own consultants to step in? I think this question is for Rob.
Okay. No, thank you, Rosal. Yeah. So first of all, there are two parts to this question. How do you get a CEO to give in? And it's a really good question because often CEOs are very precious about their strategy and precious about the work that they put in to develop their plans. I think one of the key parts of the way that we work is we often work with organizations who clearly are having challenges with it, delivering their strategy, but sometimes everything is going really well. And that's often a good time to actually talk to a CEO. But what we do is we don't come in to an organization and make any assumptions that that we know the answers in any given sort of technical area or any specific area that an organization operates in. But what we do say to a CEO is we help the CEO to understand that it's not just our research that says 2/3 of strategies, well-formulated strategies, fail due to poor execution. It's global research, and our job here is not to help rewrite or rechange the strategy. Our job here is to help that organization to find the answers to enable them to be more successful. And in the process of working with that CEO, we then often uncover misalignments. So it's I think the first part of the question is really by helping that organization to understand that they have the answer within the organization. This isn't some clever consultant coming in from the outside with lots of fancy ideas, and then helping to ask the right questions which highlight misalignment, and then it's about pointing that organization and helping to point that organization in the right direction. The second part of the question says, further, do you work with your own team to implement a strategy? Yes, we do. Well, yes, we do. But once again, our intent is not to write an organization's strategy, because the answer is always in the organization. Our intent is to help that organization to find the answers themselves. And yes, we can then help, or we can then work with some of our team of consultants around the world to help that organization deliver what it needs to deliver.
Oh, thank you, Rob. I have another question here, and I think it's also for you. How can I ensure that our leaders own our vision?
Actually, I think that might be a question for Phil. I'll hand that one over to Phil.
Okay, thanks, Rob. I think a good question. I think it's important that, as Rob was saying, you get leaders really to, if they haven't been involved in developing the strategy or developing the vision, then you're right, they may not feel ownership of it. That needs to be discovered and unearthed. And using things like, as Rob talked about, Align Plus strategy, everybody sets out at the beginning by doing the diagnostic, how much they agree or possibly disagree with the vision and the strategy. And by getting them together in a room, you actually flesh out in a well-facilitated way what those alignments and what those misalignments are. You know, do we all believe our strategy is right? Do we all believe our vision is right? Or do we see it from slightly different angles? And that needs to be surfaced. So you need the tools, ones that we've mentioned, to really surface that and then have a discussion. So by the end of that workshop, if there are any areas where people are uncertain or they don't understand or it needs clarification or they're against it, we need to get that out in the open. And by the end of the workshop, come up with a view that we can all share, that we all understand, excuse me, and that we can all buy into. Because using that slide that Rob showed about casting a shadow, if you've only got one person in that leadership team doesn't agree, they can go out and send the wrong message. So by getting it out there, by discussing it, by getting those views on the table, discussed, you come out with a view that is shared by that team and that you're happy to go out and promote.
Great. Thanks, Philip. Okay, so we have another question, and I think this one is for Anish. So what are the 3 dimensions to stress task strategy?
If you look at this question in terms of how an organization deals with the issues that they face in executing strategy, one of the key things to remember is that very, very few organizations can focus on 20 things at the same time. Most organizations, in our experience, can focus at best on 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 if you really stretch things, issues or focus areas. And the magic of our approach to this is that the Align Plus diagnostics actually help in a very quick, non-invasive kind of way that doesn't disrupt the organization to put their fingers on those 2 or 3 critical areas that really need to be addressed if they have to succeed with the execution of their strategy. And in the course of the workshop that we conduct with them, what we do almost invariably is to come up with a joint, commonly owned view on how those issues will be tackled, who will be acting on them, what kind of timelines and goals can be set for that. And that is how the success that you're talking about is guaranteed.
Okay. Thank you, Anish. And we have another one here. Years ago, a strategy was designed to be 5 years and fixed. Now is a rolling 3 years that is reviewed every year. What do you recommend in terms of timeframes for setting a strategy? Then how agile should it be? I think the question is for you, Rob.
Okay, I think it's a fantastic question, actually. We are moving quicker and quicker through strategy cycles. We work with a very large organization, and they have a 3 to 5 year strategic planning process. They're very sophisticated in what they do, but they also have an annual review. And then within that annual review, they have what they actually call quarterly business reviews, but those quarterly reviews do tend to adjust and modify the strategy. So organizations really do need to be flexible, and they really must be agile today. I think I will come back to the core premise that we had in the presentation that I shared with you, and that is that irrespective of timeframes and strategic planning timeframes, an organization always needs to be aligned to its core purpose. That's why you exist. So you can take any of the kind of really successful organizations, either big or small, but success is measured in different ways, of course. And if they have stuck to their core purpose, because the strategy evolves from that purpose, then actually, in a sense, it almost doesn't matter how often or how long they set their time frame on for their strategy, as long as it's connected to the purpose. And I think organizations absolutely have to be flexible. They have to be flexible, particularly in this day and age, because things are moving so quickly. So what time frame would I recommend? I'd still recommend a 3-year time frame for a strategy, but I would recommend regular reviews and regular evolutions of that plan. I think that's the reality of today.
Okay, thank you so much, Rob. So we have another question. I think this one is for Phil. How can a strategy consultant deliver a powerful story that influences leaders?
Thanks very much. The best thing we find is to use real examples. So it was a bit like Rob did earlier when he talked about the organisation where they provided solutions, but they're actually tasking or measuring their sales staff on selling products. So if you want to get an organisation to understand what the changes can make, we use a mnemonic called CAR, C-A-R. So you need to set the context. So explain why you're doing something. So we did some work for a global engineering company a little while ago that had very old-fashioned, labour-intensive and expensive production methods, which meant their products could be manufactured on a subcontract basis and replicated easily. So that was the issue. We then sort of talk about action. The A is for action. So what do we do? Well, for that organisation, we did the Align Plus diagnostic. So this was the diagnostic that we sent out to the leadership team. They completed individually, and then we got them together once they completed that diagnostic to share in a workshop what each of them said. So that's the action that we did, and the result out of that, they came up with a view that they really need to design and implement a leadership and organisation capability model. They then also developed and designed and delivered a 3-year global leadership program that also used one of our other models, Align Plus Leadership, other modules. So it's making sure that everybody understands what the issues are, as I say, explain what you did, and then talk about the actions. In that way, you'll get buy-in from organisations that you're talking to if you're the consultant trying to work with the company.
Okay, thank you very much, Philip. So we have another one here, and I think this one is for Anish. How can I test alignment or misalignment to strategy?
That's actually a very, very good question, because while we've been talking all along about the importance of alignment, when it comes to a question of how you test it and then how do you bring it about, we have devised our set of digital diagnostics, the Align Plus suite of diagnostics, to test alignment by asking a series of very probing questions. And then our system automatically analyzes the combined responses of the teams and throws up the most meaningful areas of variance within the team. And those then are what are fed into the workshop that follows the completion of the diagnostic. And that is where not only are the misalignments actually identified and acknowledged, and acknowledgement is a very important part of it, but also the actions that could set right the misalignment are agreed and assigned to people. So that's how it actually works.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Anish. And we have another one here. And I think this one is for Phil. So, can you share our 3 tips to ensure confidence that your strategy will deliver its intended outcomes? You're muted.
Let me unmute myself. Can you repeat the question, Roselle, please?
Okay. So, can you share us 3 tips to ensure confidence that your strategy will deliver its intended outcomes?
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the things that's come through strongly from what you've heard Anish say and Rob say is that if you're a senior team, whether you're an executive team or a leadership team or a departmental senior team, you've actually got to build your strategy together. Everybody needs to be part of that strategy. And if they haven't actually developed it initially, they need to understand it and be clear about what the strategy is there to do. So people need to be involved. A strategy shouldn't be something, as we said earlier, that you write and you put in a drawer and you never review again. It needs to be a working document that people review regularly, whether it's a three-year strategy, a 5-year strategy, a 1-year rolling strategy, whatever. It needs to be reviewed regularly, and people need to be part of that on that senior team. Once you've actually got your strategy and it's being out there being delivered, again, it needs to be tested regularly. Are we still aligned around the strategy? Is it still delivering what we thought it would? Is it going off track? If it is going off track, we need to make sure that we get it back on track. So it needs to be tested regularly. And the other thing is about communication. Again, it's no good having a strategy which a senior team develops and then it goes in that drawer and the rest of the organization don't know what's happening. Everybody in the business needs to know what the strategy is and also the role that they play in delivering that strategy. So it shouldn't be the best kept secret in the world. It should be something which is out there, which everyone knows about. They know what their role is in delivering it, and also how the organization is going to help them deliver it. And back to this other point, once you're doing that, you need to test it regularly to make sure it's staying on track. So those are my 3 tips, Roselle.
Well, that's very helpful. Thank you very much, Bill. So does anyone here have any questions? Okay. I think that's all. So thank you, everyone, for bringing up your questions. We're respectful of everyone's time. And with that in mind, unfortunately, we're coming to the end of this session. So we would love to receive feedback from you. So flash right in front of your screen is the QR code of the feedback form. Okay. Let's just wait for a bit on the QR form.
We're all holding our breath, Roselle. And I guess it's Melvin we're all looking at now, is it? He's not sweating at all. Look how calm he is. He's smiling, he's cheerful, he's not worried at all. This is the man who knows what he's doing. There
All
you go.
right. So that's the QR code for the feedback form. So the link will also be sent into the chat box. So head right on and tell us what you feel about today's session and how we can improve our next events. Again, 2 options for you all. Scan the QR code on your screen or click the direct link in the chat box that will be sent. And while you're doing that, let me take this moment to thank firstly our experts, Anish, Philip, and Rob, for the wonderful session. It's really useful and timely. Next, the people team for bringing this event into reality. And of course, the warmest thank you to all the audience we have here for participating and making this discussion engaging. So if you find this session useful for you, we highly encourage you to check the other sessions that we have for the whole month of August. So this has been Roselle from April, but I won't be saying goodbye for now. We will see you all at the next session. Again, thank you and enjoy the rest of the day, everyone. Bye. Thanks again.
Bye. Thanks, Roselle.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.